Following England's 9-wicket defeat against New Zealand in the World Cup opener, it's time for Ask George. Hi, George. That wasn't the
G'day.
stuff England wanted.
They weren't armed and good, were they? Do you see what I've done there?
Yeah.
See what I've done? Look at the disdain in your face. I've missed that look.
If that's the pun we're getting on day one, imagine the pun we're going to be getting in November. The first question comes from Sushant. Do you think any other sport would schedule the opening game of a World Cup on a working day in the biggest stadium without the host?
That's a lovely, upbeat question to start. There's a lot of things that other hosts wouldn't do. I'm very aware that no one wants to hear a journalist moan about their life because it's terrific in lots of ways, but this is not a well-organized event. And I could give you a lot of reasons, but I don't think there's any other World Cup that they only published the fixture list 3 months in advance. I think it was probably a year in advance when it was the one before. I think they then changed the fixtures with 40 something days. If you were an England supporter and you had the travel that England had, you'd be mad to attend. I'll give you a little example. I think that the Barmy Army sold a couple of dozen packages for this tour, and I think the Bharat Army sold about 8,000. Because that's those people who are not perhaps following England, and I think the England schedule is very demanding for spectators. In fact, I don't think spectators were considered at all. So there's an awful lot of things that they're doing in this tournament that I don't think a tournament that actually had respect for their paying customers would do. And they'll say, oh, it doesn't matter because we've got a massive TV deal, and they'll arrogantly brush that off. But it looks pretty rubbish to start a World Cup with 130,000 empty seats. And that's probably not an exaggeration. It was sparse at the start. And it was very, very difficult to get into the ground. I can tell you that the police outside the ground said to me, go away, shoo, go away. And then told me I couldn't bring in a laptop and a phone, which, and that was at the media gate, by the way. So it was, there's a million things about it that are problematic, and I don't suppose that anyone will do a damn thing, to the point where I believe the balls being used, usually in a World Cup, would have ICC logos on them, wouldn't they? You check out the balls, BCCI logos. They just do what they want. They do what they want, and if I criticise too much, I won't get into the next game. That's how it works.
Do you think the size of the stadium made it look worse than it was, or am I trying to be generous there?
Well, why hold it there then? And there are other stadiums. There's one about 3 miles across town. Played there before. Of course, by the end, I think there were probably enough people in there to fill Trent Bridge. Maybe Edgbaston, Lords of the Push. But yeah, it's a vast stadium. But they were saying halfway through there's 40,000 here. Nonsense. And that it'll be the biggest attendance at an opening game. Well, wasn't the opening game of the 2015 one at the MCG? Have I got that wrong? So England and Australia, was that the first game? Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I've misremembered. But there'd have been 90-odd thousand in there, wouldn't there? I don't think they made it very easy for spectators to come. I've probably made that point quite enough. It's not a great spectator on the ground experience. I think it's probably a lot better on TV.
Well, moving on to England, Danny asks, is it too early for England fans to panic?
Yeah, there's no benefit in panicking. And they did have, this, if you think back to the 2 games in a row they lost to Sri Lanka and Australia, I think those were the successive ones. In the last World Cup, there was a moment then when it looked as if they would have to win all their games. But I remember going to training, I think it was at Edgbaston. They played at India at Edgbaston the next game, and they were very upbeat, very confident. I don't know. This lot, they don't look like that. They looked tired, but yet unprepared. They looked a bit of a rabble today, but I mean, they're obviously a much better side than they showed. But there should be warning bells ringing, I think. There was quite a lot wrong today. I mean, there was a chasm between the sides, weren't there? And I don't think New Zealand are one of the favourites. But, they're obviously better than they showed. And it is too early to write them off.
Bears Fanatic asks, are England undercooked? They didn't look ready. Limited ODI cricket this summer in a World Cup year, and it seems like the players have been let down by the ECB's planning.
Well, I broadly agree. I broadly agree about them looking undercooked. Yeah, they're both weary and undercooked. There's a lot of sort of injuries, but the rhythm of the batters and bowlers looked off. Yes, they've played. This squad have played what 4 ODIs since March, 8th of March, whatever it is. Yeah, they've had to focus on other things. Are you blaming the ECB though? I mean, yeah, I suppose ultimately they take responsibility that players want to do other things. Yeah, we know all this. The priority has been the 100, and so the best weeks of the summer are stuffed with that. And they haven't had the preparation they had going into 2019, when this tournament was clearly the priority for English cricket for several years. Now it isn't. And, you tend to reap what you sow a little bit with such things.
Stephen Eade asks, do you think this England side look too old to win this World Cup?
I think there's something in that. I'm not sure about too old, but there are a lot of players who are probably have peaked and in the farewell bit of their ODI's career, certainly. And I think there are quite a lot of aches and pains in there. I think the England physio is probably the busiest person in showbiz, really. Stokes is clearly really, really struggling. Mark Wood's just come back. He bowled quick, but not as well as we know he can. We know Adil Rashid's had injuries to his calf and his back. Well, those are 3 really important players right there. Chris Woakes didn't look right today. Obviously had long-term knee issues. And Johnny Bairstow had to have treatment during the warm-up game. So, yeah, I think there's quite a lot to be said for them. Not necessarily that they're old, because they're all younger than Jimmy Anderson, but that there are a lot of miles on the clock. I don't think they have replenished as the great eras of one-day sides tend to, and it does feel a bit Australia 06, 07. When, Duncan Fletcher kept faith with that brilliant side that won them the 05 Ashes, and they were broken mentally and physically.
Well, Will Cooling asks exactly that. Am I wrong to worry? This feels very Ashes 06-07, an overconfident England not preparing properly, staying loyal to ageing and injured players. Why didn't we have warm-ups in Asian conditions? Why did the ECB almost destroy list day cricket? And why are we trying to kill Stokes?
Well, they're not trying to kill Stokes, are they? But I think Will makes a lot of good points there. But I don't think they're overconfident. I think that they're sensible and they're calm and they're experienced. I don't think there's any arrogance or anything about them. I really don't. But they're not as well prepared. That is fair. They've played one warm-up game in these conditions. I thought there've been times in the last week or so where they've looked very hot in a way that maybe they wouldn't have. I mean, it is hot. It is unusually hot. It's the hottest I think I've been in India. And maybe you need a bit longer to acclimatise. So it's all these things we know the answers, really, don't we? Other things are priorities, and usually the priority is financial gain. But the players are all part of that. So I think it would be a bit disingenuous, a bit simplistic to just say, "Oh, it's all the ECB," because if you gave these players a schedule which had lots of ODIs in it, I think they would quite possibly miss lots of them, play T20, and then unretire on the brink of the World Cup.
Reese Benjamin asks, did today prove that England's middle order is too weak and that they have 5 number 7s? Buttler, Ali, Livingston, Curran and Woakes. Number 5 is far too high for any one of them.
Buttler might be the best limited overs batter England have ever had. It's not too high for him. Look, I know what you're saying, but Chris Woakes, was he in that list? He's not coming in at 5. I mean, he was. He's a 7 or 8, isn't he? And he's a very good number 8. And there is something in what you're saying, but I don't think Jos Buttler's too high at 5. I just don't think they batted very well. They didn't bat with a lot of confidence. They didn't bat with a lot of form and a lot of rhythm. They're good players who look out of form to me, and they just need a bit more of a bat. But someone like Liam Livingston coming in where he is, I don't know. We know what he can do. I would love to see him do it a bit more under pressure. I do think there's a legit question to be asked there. Yeah, Moen came in at 5, didn't he, today? Is that right?
Yes.
Was he 6?
He came in before Buttler, didn't he?
Right. Okay. So, at this stage of his career, is he that player? I don't know. But he did get a 50 in the warm-up match, and I think they probably wanted a left-hander in to mix it up a little bit. So, these things do have to be fluid. But I'm not sure I'm going to accept that Jos Buttler's a number 7, even though I do accept there's a general sort of veracity in the question as a whole.
Do you think England made the wrong decision in kind of picking an extra batter instead of having someone like Topley or Atkinson in the bowling attack?
So by instinct, I would have gone with the extra batter. I probably would have gone by instinct with the team that they did, but I think I'm quite cautious. And I think that the bolder thing to do would have been to go with Topley instead of probably Moen, maybe Curran or Livingston, and go for the juggler a bit when you bowled. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. That there are right and wrongs. You just got to play better. They didn't play very well. They didn't bat very well. They didn't score enough runs. Bringing in Reece Topley wouldn't have changed that.
Swapnil Singh asks, why were Woakes and Wood not able to play the role that Matt Henry and Trent Boult played in the power play and middle overs?
Good
Was
question.
it due or something else?
Really good question. Nah, there's no due. Very little due. Don't worry about it. The dues. Honestly, it's not happening. Yeah. So they didn't bowl a good length, did they? Matt Henry bowled a brilliant spell, but he basically bowled a test length. Matt Henry is a terrific bowler in conditions offering him anything. Yeah, anything. If they don't offer him anything, he might struggle because he doesn't have the pace to, for other weapons, really. But Chris Woakes should absolutely be able to do that. I thought these were conditions perfect for Chris Woakes. And they had just seen New Zealand prosper by bowling a length or just back of a length. And yet they come out and bowl full. They bowl floaty. They look as if they're trying to swing it. And I don't think New Zealand swung it. I think they seamed it. And I find that really odd. I just don't understand why they got that wrong. So that is a tactical thing. I think there's something in the dressing room there that I can't believe that a bowler as good and as experienced as Chris Woakes lost his length to the extent that he was told to bowl back of a length, that he bowled those floaty long hops. Not long hops, half volleys. Just, it looked to me like he was looking for swing and that was the plan, and there was no swing. But there might have been seam. Look, to be fair to them as well, it did look as if the conditions eased. But England bowled quite a lot of what looked like throwdowns. Like, show us your drive, Devon. And New Zealand batted beautifully. They batted absolutely tremendously. But it's a long time since I've seen England bowl that poorly.
And background noise asks, how much should we read into New Zealand's excellence or England's inferiority today in terms of tournament expectations?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it, I suppose? But New Zealand, should only get better. They've got Lockie Ferguson to come back. They've got Tim Southey to come back. They've got Kane Williamson to come back. England have Ben Stokes to come back as well. So there's reason for optimism for both sides. But it was a worrying performance. I'm struggling to think off the top of my head of a game of champions who have lost so heavily in a tournament. In a tournament they've gone on to win. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There might be an example that I'm being really thick about. Pakistan very almost did in the one they won. They got bowled out for 70 odd by England, but then it rained and they got away with it a wee bit. Maybe that's an example. But yeah, definitely areas of concern for England. Definitely encouraging for New Zealand. They looked, much better. But it is one day. And there is quite a lot more to come. Perhaps we'll look back on this as an aberration in a few weeks, but definitely quite a lot of thinking to do for England.
That's all for today. If you want to read George's coverage and follow his adventures in India, take out a subscription to The Cricketer online.